I can tell you that I probably had every pet you can think of except for cats. We weren't cat people, but dogs, salamanders, birds, hamsters, gerbils, anything you could that I could get from the pet store and anything I can find out in the woods, I was trying to bring it into the house. So I've always loved animals.
Okay.
Oh, you are bringing home stray animals into the house?
I tried to.
Hey, what's good, everybody? And welcome to another edition of Black Female Landscape Nature Photographers, focus on Black men in landscape and outdoor photography. And you guys all know me, and I'm co-host and co-founder.
I'm Keisha Holmes. I'm also the co-host and co-founder.
And today we have with us David Greaves with his wildlife photography.
Thank you.
So David, tell us where are you located?
Yeah, I'm located right now in Newark, Delaware.
Okay. Were you
How
born
long
and
you
raised
been
here?
I've been here about 10 years, a little over 10 years, and I was born and raised in the Washington, D.C. area. I grew up in Prince George's County, Maryland.
Okay. And how long have you been into photography?
Oh boy, it was kind of an off and on thing. Like just growing up, like I would pick up cameras here and there, but it didn't really connect with me until about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, around 2016, where I kind of connected my love of nature with photography, and then it just kind of grew from there.
Okay,
And
so
you've always had an interest. Hold on, Angela. You always had an interest in wildlife?
Yeah. So absolutely. So growing up in Maryland, I'm an 80s and 90s kid. So growing up, there wasn't no tablets or internet or social media and all that stuff. So I spent majority of my free time outside with the neighborhood kids and my older brother and older sister. So but animals were always my thing. If my dad took us to the library, I'm getting comic books, but I'm also getting animal encyclopedias, bird guides, insect guides, amphibian guides. So I can tell you that I probably had every pet you can think of except for cats. We weren't cat people, but dogs, salamanders, birds, hamsters, gerbils, anything that I could get from the pet store and anything I can find out in the woods, I was trying to bring it into the house. So I've always loved animals.
Okay.
oh, you are bringing home stray animals into the house?
I tried to. Now, did they make it into the house? If my mom caught me, no. But I can tell you a funny story. I was probably around 5 or 6, and I had found some bird eggs outside that had dropped to the ground. So, watching Sesame Street and reading books, I know that you got to sit on eggs, you got to keep them on and make them hatch. So I put the eggs in a little plant pot my mom had outside. I covered them up with grass, and I brought them into the house. So I don't know where my parents were at, but I said the best way to heat these eggs up is to put them in the oven. So I set the oven to 350 and I put the eggs in the oven, and I was standing there by the oven. Mom was like, "What are you doing?" I said, "No, I'm just trying to warm these eggs up." She's like, "What eggs?" I said, "The eggs I got from outside." So she said, "Boy," she opened up the oven. She took the bird eggs out in the plant pot. I said, "What are you doing?" "I was trying to hatch the eggs." She said, "Put those eggs back outside." So I put them back outside, and I cried because I wanted to hatch the eggs myself. But like I said, I just always love animals, and that's just one story that sticks out in my mind of how much I love animals. That I put bird eggs in the oven to try to hatch them. So,
Wow. That's an interesting story.
yeah.
But wait, you were standing by the oven like, okay,
Yep.
it's any minute now.
And I had the light on. I was peeking through the little glass, trying to see when they hatched. Yep.
Oh my gosh.
You would have had you some fried chicken.
Yeah. Fried robins.
You mean baked chicken?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So what happened in 2016 where from your love of nature sparked and connected with the photography?
Yeah, so I had from maybe like 6 or 7 years prior to 2016, I was doing a lot of freelance videography, doing a lot of weddings and events and stuff like that. I kind of got burnt out from doing that, from people wanting to nickel and dime me, not wanting to pay what I'm asking them to pay and stuff like that. So just amongst other things, I was just like out of it. I said I need a reset. So I had grabbed my tripod and my video. I had a DSLR, a Canon 60D.
I'm sorry, excuse me. What camera did you say that was that
I
you
said,
turned on?
I said a Canon 60D. I am a Canon man. Yeah.
You're a Canon man?
I'm a Canon man. Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, continue.
No worries. Yeah, so I took my camera on the tripod, and I just thought, at the time I was doing a lot of videography. So I went to John Hines National Wildlife Refuge by the Philadelphia airport. And I went and found it. They have a bridge that's over top of a wetland. So I just started filming whatever I saw. Herons, eagles flying over, bumblebees, whatever. I just started filming these things. And a sense of peace just kind of came over me. I was like, wow, I love doing this. And it kind of took me back to my childhood, because I watched a lot of nature documentaries on TV as a kid. PBS, Nova, Wild America, all that stuff. And I was like, wow, I like doing this. There's something to this. So I went home and I edited the footage together, whatever, and I put a little montage of my the shots I took that day. I was like, when I would edit weddings and stuff, it was a drag. It was like 40 hours of looking at people over and over again. I hated it. But when I was editing the wildlife that I videoed, I was like, this is great. I love doing this. I spent hours doing it, and it just flew by. So I from there, I said, I'm going to start filming wildlife. So I started going to different parks and national wildlife refuges and filming. And what I would do was, since I was filming in a raw format, I would pull stills from the video and use those as pictures. And it worked pretty good for a while, until I went to my job, and there was a photographer there that I'm cool with. And he said, "You're cheating. That's not real photography. That's backwards what you're doing." And I was like, "But it's the best of both worlds. I'm filming, and then I can take the stills out. What's wrong with it?" He said, "It's not real photography." So he said, "I challenge you to go out into the woods with your DSLR, keep it on photo mode, no video mode, and start taking photos." So I did that, and I fell in love with one. I didn't have to walk around lugging around a tripod if I didn't want to, because with video, you need that stability to keep the camera steady and to keep the shot steady. With a still camera, I didn't have to do that. So I was able to maneuver through the woods quicker than having that thing on my shoulder walking through the woods. So that was the first thing. And the other thing was, when you're doing video, if you make too much noise and scare the animals away, you spend all that time setting up to miss the shot. Whereas with still photography, I can sit there, and in moments, in a matter of a second of me pressing the shutter button, I got a shot. I have something. So that really kind of hooked me into the photography side of things, the still photography side of things. And then when the same coworkers put me in Photoshop, and we started looking at some of my images that I thought were terrible because they were overblown or whatever, and he was able to dial stuff back and show me how to do exposure and edit the photos. I was like, this is cool. Like, I really fell in love with it. And then from there, I just kept trucking with the still photography side of it. But I still feel as though there's still some components of videography that translate over to photography as well. Right. They're kind of interchangeable in some things, like composition and focus and exposure and lighting and stuff like that. So it was kind of blending the two, but I really just fell in love with the still photography part of it, because just the ease of it versus doing a videography piece.
So your focus now is primarily, is it birds or wildlife in general?
People always ask me that, because I have a lot of bird photos, but I love everything. It's just that birds are everywhere. They're readily available most of the time and at different times of the day. But I love everything. I'll photograph mammals, amphibians, insects, birds, like whatever it is. Like, that's how I grew up, just loving everything. So I try to photograph everything. Different things that have the different challenges, but for the most part, I photograph everything.
Okay.
He like everything. It's outside. I'm getting it. If it
Yep.
falls, it flies, I'm getting it.
Absolutely. Yep.
So when you are, from your experience of, being outside and going
Mhm.
from people to nature,
Mhm.
you had made the comment that you just have this sense of peace,
Mhm.
right? How do you feel that that's contributed to the man you are today?
Wow, that's a great question.
Okay, I'm gonna sip my tea while you go ahead and think.
So I would answer that like this. I've learned a lot of life lessons by being out in nature, one, and also by photographing nature. Um, when I teach photography classes at a local garden here in Delaware, one of the things I ask people, like, what do you think is the most important thing you need to have when doing nature photography? And I always say it begins with the letter P. It's patience,
Right.
because these animals don't do what you want them to do. The weather doesn't do what you want it to do. The sun doesn't do what you want it to do. Everything is about being adaptable and being patient, because you may go to a park one day, see an animal in one position or one area, and may not be there the next day or the next minute. It's about being patient. So that's one thing that it taught me to. I'm a very patient person, but it added an extra layer of patience to my um, person, is because you just have to be. You can't rush to get shots. You can't move fast when you're trying to get photographs of birds or other animals. You got to be still and you got to be patient. You have to wait. So that's one thing I would say. It contributed to who I am today, is patience, but also I'm being present in the moment. Um, I will go to a park and have goals. I want to go see an eagle today, or photograph an eagle today. But if I see a butterfly that flies by and lands close to me, I may take a photo of that and miss the eagle. But it's teaching me to be present in the moment, and to be flexible and adaptable in my environments, because, you know, I don't have control over everything. I certainly don't have control over nature. When you're photographing people, you can tell them to move a certain way and do that an angle this way. I can't do that with animals. So it's the patience thing. It teaches me to be present. Um, I think it also teaches me um, to relinquish control, because again, I try to balance my love of getting great shots with why I do it in the first place, which is I love nature. I love being outside. So there's sometimes I kind of force myself to take a walk and don't take my camera, because I don't want to get caught up, like be legalistic with it. I got to have my camera to get a shot. I got to get a shot, get a shot. Versus I'll take a walk in the neighborhood and something great will happen, but I won't have my camera, but I'll enjoy it nonetheless, because that's what I love. I just love nature and being in it. And I think it just, again, it just brings me a sense of peace. Like I was out just taking the trash out before I got on here, and there was a red-tailed hawk just circling in the air. And I just sat there and watched it for 5 minutes, just circling. I was like, I wonder what it's thinking while it's up there. I wonder how that feels to be able to fly so high, just glide on the wind and stuff like that. That's that's pretty much how I think it contributes to how I could be present, be patient, and just be at peace in different moments that I find myself in.
Nice.
Mm-mm.
Some people feel that it's the camera, or should I
Mhm.
say Canon camera,
I'm sorry, Keisha. Can you say that word one more time?
rather than the photographer,
Uh-huh.
who creates the image.
Mhm.
So tell us your thought on that. Do you think it's the camera itself, or is it the photographer, or do you think it's a combination of both?
I, that's a great question. So I will say this. I think that it's I think cameras are tools, and I think each workman with the tool uses it a different way. So um, I used to follow this videographer named Philip Bloom a lot, and he used to sell all these equipment and everything. And I remember him doing a podcast where he said he was at one of his, events where he sells his stuff. And this guy walked up to him and said, I bought your cameras, your dollies, boom, 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 boom. And he asked him, well, what have you shot with it? Well, nothing yet, but I got all this great stuff and I know how to. He's like, you got to use the tools first. You got to develop your eye, develop, your voice and using these tools, versus having all this great equipment and you don't know how to use it. And I
Exactly.
know plenty of people who have way better cameras than me. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to use it. And I know people that have a cell phone and they could take a beautiful shot of a flower or an insect because they understand composition and lighting and all that great stuff and exposure. And they take great photos with their cell phones. So for me, I think it's the artist's eye first, and then the tool. The tool helps you to bring out more of what you're seeing. When I started out, I just started out with a 70 to 20 millimeter lens, which it's got some zoom on it, but for what I was trying to do, it wasn't that great. But what that forced me to do was be creative in how I could get closer to my subjects to get the shots. And then when I was able to get a longer lens, my shots became even better because I knew how to get closer to the animals and take advantage of the fact that I had a longer zoom lens to get even more detail in my shots. So I look at equipment as, you know, you get what you can afford and you maximize it to its greatest extent possible. And then when you get something new, it's all the better because now you have the skills you develop with the older equipment, and then you have the features that make things easier with the new equipment. So that's how I kind of look at it. So I would say artist first, and then the equipment and the older tools that you use to get the shots.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
Absolutely. And while we're on the tools and the zoom lens, I have to bring this up. Not a lot of photographers are out there on a kayak with their super telephoto lens trying to get this shot. Why don't you share with us about how that came about?
Okay, that's a good question. So
and the tips on protecting the gear. I kayak, right? And as far as I've gotten with camera is my cell phone and a Ziploc bag and my action camera.
Okay.
I was like,
so I was at there's a state park I go to that's so where I'm at in Delaware, I'm right over the Maryland line. So I could be in Maryland by making a left out of my neighborhood, and I'd be in Maryland and make it right. I'm in Delaware. So there's a state park called Elk Neck State Park that I kind of started this journey on. I kind of went there and I'll go there all the time and shoot and kind of get to know where I can find stuff and all that stuff. So I was there one day and I spent the whole day there just shooting and everything. And so they have a boat dock area that's right on the Chesapeake Bay. So after I got done shooting for like 4 hours, I went and sat on the dock of the bay, like the song, and I sat there.
Sitting on the dock of the bay.
Yep. And that came to my mind sitting there. And I was like, I looked out over the water. I said, I wonder what's out there. What's out there on the water? Like, man, I said, I wonder how could I get out there? And then my mind came to the kayak. If I get a kayak, I can get out there and be on the water with the animals and see what shots I can get that way. So that was like a 6-month journey into how I got to outfit my car or SUV so that I can carry the kayak. So that was a piece of research I had to do. I had to figure out what kind of roof rails to get on the car, how much that's going to cost, then the rack, how much that's going to cost, and then the holders on top of the rack, how much that's going to cost, and figure all that out. And then I had to figure out what kind of kayak to get that I'm not going to be flipping and tipping over with my stuff. So I did a lot of research on YouTube. I just put in photography by kayak, and a lot of great stuff came up, and people with recommendations on kayaks that they use. Some with pedals, some with not. Some people had intricate rigs of tripods on the front of their kayaks and stuff like that. I said, I don't want to do all that. I want to keep it simple. I went to the REI store and I talked to the guy there. I said, look, this is what I want to do. I want to get on a flat water, no rapids or nothing like that, but flat water kayak. I need something stable that when I take my camera out to photograph something, I'm not doing all that stuff. So he recommended to me, it was a Wilderness Systems Pungo 120. He said that you can pretty much stand up in that thing. It's not going to tip. So waited around for some sales or whatever. I got it in the fall of 2019, like in October 2019, right before the pandemic, which was great because you couldn't find them after that. But
a lot of stuff was gone.
Yeah. Got it October 2019. I did my first kind of maiden voyage at a local wildlife refuge in Delaware. And I went out there and So ask your question about how I keep my equipment safe. So I have like a 20-liter dry bag that fits the whole camera inside, lens and body, everything intact inside of that. And then you can roll it and it clips shut. So you can spray it with water, you can dunk it or whatever. It's still airtight. So my goal with my first voyage on my kayak was to figure out how it moves when I pull it out, how I'm shooting, how it moves and all that stuff, and how stable it is. And then practice taking it out and putting it back in, taking it out and putting it back in. So I spent like at least 3 or 4 hours just on the water, just practicing moving and with the bag between my legs and paddling. And then if I saw something, how I can slide it out smoothly and get the shot and put it back in smoothly. And that was my whole day I spent doing that, just to kind of get used to just being on the water. So once I figured that out, and then I figured out different ways that I could kind of sneak up on animals while I'm in the kayak, because that's like the same concepts I used on land, I use on the water too. So I was that same day I went out, I was photographing. It was a kingfisher that was flying around, and they're pain in the butts to photograph. But I realized that if I paddle just enough, if I paddle just enough to get some speed, I can just coast in without making any splashing or anything, and just get shots while I'm going in. And hopefully I get close enough to get a good one, but I'm getting some as I'm approaching. I do the same thing on land. If I see something, I'll shoot on my approach. That way I got something versus waiting for the perfect one and get nothing. So that's kind of my logic with that. But your dry bags, keep your camera safe. The type of water you paddle on, like I don't do anything rough, a lot of wakes and waves and stuff like that. I usually like to do a lot of rivers and flat wetlands and ponds. And like the most stable kayak you can afford is the best thing. Like people think I'm crazy that I do it, but there's something about being on the water, again, back to the peaceful thing. There's something about being on that water. It's something about being in the midst of nature on the water, because a lot of times, like if you think about turtles and stuff, like if you walk up to a turtle that's on the low, they're gonna plop right in. Right. On kayaks, I've gotten like 2 feet away. I've actually scooped up baby turtles out of the water while I'm in a kayak, because they're just chilling. I'm not really bothering them. They think I'm one of them, I guess. So, but it just allows you to get another angle. Right. You get in there from their point of view versus, the water. You're on the water with them getting those shots. And especially this time of year when you got a lot of different warblers coming back in, migrating in for the spring and summertime, a lot of them kind of hang out near the edge of the water. So being on the water, they're kind of hanging out doing their thing. I just kind of coast right up, get shots, keep moving and keep coasting by. It's just an amazing way to get photos out. And I think it's one of my favorite things to do in the spring and summer is this photography by kayak.
So what do you find the hardest part about wildlife photography?
The hardest part, let me think about that for a second. I would probably say it's the hard part, but it's the fun part. It's the unpredictability of nature. Like, right. Sometimes animals will throw you a bone and they will just sit there for as long as you want and get as many shots as you want. Other times you think you got them and they see you and they're gone. So for me, it adds a level of gratefulness, because I'm like, oh, you stayed for me this time. Cool, I got the shots. Or it could be frustrating when you think you did everything right and they still leave anyway. So I think for me, it's like the most probably frustrating thing is just how like it could be unpredictable. Or, let's say you were trying to get a photo of a fox. I'm out here like late evening, or I'm out here early morning. Where are you? And then they show up at 12 p.m. in the afternoon. It's just like
yeah.
I think that's the part of it for me that can be frustrating sometimes. But I also recognize that that's what makes it the most rewarding thing as well, is that you have no control over it. But when something works and you get the shots you want, it's a great sense of achievement when you get that, because one, the animals were cooperating. And sometimes you get a perfect song of animal, lighting, everything, angle, everything is perfect. You got nice sharp eyes on the subject or whatever. Like, so I think the hardest thing is just kind of managing your expectations and managing the unpredictability of nature when you're doing that type of photography.
Yeah, so that's where that patience come in.
Patience, yeah, exactly, right, Keisha?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Photography is patience.
Hmm.
If money wasn't an object, where would you go? Photography related.
Oh, man. So a lot of my friends on social media and other have been going to Africa and doing safaris and stuff, which I, they tell me it's pretty affordable. I just haven't gotten around to looking into it yet. So Africa has always been on my list, but I think for me, I would love to go to the Galapagos Islands because I have a buddy of mine who's gone at least a couple of times, and he wasn't really into nature photography. He was a photographer, but he was just kind of snapping or whatever when he went. But he told me you would love it. Just the diversity of animals you see in the Galapagos Islands, stuff that I always read about as a child, the iguanas, the different types of birds they have on those islands, and the reptiles and amphibians and stuff. Like I would love to go there and shoot. Madagascar had some of the craziest animals there. I would love to go there. So for me, I would just probably say money no object, Africa, Galapagos Islands, anywhere in Central America. I have been to Belize twice, and I've shot there. I love Belize; it's great. But just and then also it's actually I don't think a lot of people think about Europe as like a naturey type of place, but there's got to be some cool stuff out in England and France, and they got to have some endemic wildlife there that I just haven't been thinking about because when I think about England, I don't think about animals per se, but I know they're there, and I want to go and find it. So like money no object, I go everywhere. If money was no object, I just pick some place and just go for 2 weeks, come back, rest, take another 2 weeks, go somewhere else.
Money is no object. You don't even
Yeah.
come back. Just go.
Yeah.
How
Yes. Yes. Yep.
So do you just photograph within Delaware, or do you go to neighboring states?
Yeah. I try to when I started this kind of journey, I was like, I'm trying to go. I would just go on my phone and go to Google Maps. And if I'm going to be in Maryland that weekend, I type in nature, wildlife refuges near me, and whatever popped up, I just pick one and just go. Sight unseen, just check it out. I do the same thing in Delaware. I do the same thing in PA, New Jersey. So I do in the area I am, like the tri-state area. I travel around through there. Even in like if I'm traveling for work or something, like in I think 2019, I had to go to some training in San Francisco. I looked up what's the wildlife in San Francisco. They had the sea lions by the docks. I went and did the sea lion thing. There was a national park, Golden Gate State Park. I went there and I shot there. So I will travel. Time and funding allows. I'll go anywhere. There's a lot of places in the U.S. I haven't been yet. An old teacher of mine invited me to come up to Maine to go to Arcadia. I think it's Arcadia State Park or National Park, one or the other, to go out there and shoot. I have a dream of, so I have a dream shot of a male moose, full rat horns, emerging out of the water with the water dripping, the grass and moss dripping, and I'm just there on the kayak, just getting that shot of it coming out. Like that's a dream shot of mine. And I know they have moose in Maine, so that's
Okay.
so I kind of also look at like where I can find certain things. Like I know that if I want to see a buffalo or bison, go to Utah, somewhere out west. They're all over the place out there. So I kind of have like a bucket list, so to speak, of places in the U.S. I want to go to see certain things.
you have those pictures behind, which I'm sure that our viewers have been checking out.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you get those shots? Tell us a little bit about those.
Okay, so this one is a sleeping chipmunk. I took this as I said, at a friend's house up in the Poconos, like hanging out for like a 4th of July weekend, and I saw this little brown thing scurrying across the ground. I was like, "It's a chipmunk," and I love chipmunks. Always have as a kid from the cartoon, and just I love chipmunks. So, I saw it, and it was scurrying across the grass, and it landed on this big boulder and just sat there and fell asleep. I was like, "This is," because those things are very skittish. I'm not like they always moving around. And I'm like, "You're not worried about predators, no hawks swooping in and getting you." He just crossed his little feet and went right to sleep. And I just kind of crept up and got the shot. And like, you can see like the kind of there's a light kind of angling right on it as you see. It was just the perfect setting. This one is a bald eagle in its nest. I took this at Elk Neck State Park that I mentioned earlier. So because I go there a lot, I tend to find where a lot of nest or animals hang out at frequent or whatever. And this nest has been there for the last 6 years, and this pair of bald eagles comes back year after year to have their eaglets or whatever. So I happened to have found a spot where it was like a clear view of the nest. And it's funny because like the glare on this eagle's face, it's like, don't even think about coming up here and messing with us. So this is one of my favorite shots. As a kid, I always would see eagles in books and stuff like that. And I was like, man, I finally get to see an eagle for myself. And I know where they are, where they nest at. And then this one is one of my absolute favorites. This is
that's beautiful.
A gray wolf that I photographed out at there's a wolf conservation organization up in New Salem, New York. And a buddy of mine put me onto this organization because I wanted to get a shot of wolves or whatever. I'm like, I gotta go to Yellowstone and I'm not gonna be able to get that close. They're dangerous, all that other stuff. So
and it might not be out when you go.
All that, yes. So at this place, they raise the wolves and then they release them into the wild. They like, so I don't know how they get them, but they breed them there and then they release them to repopulate different areas where wolves habitate. So I went there and they had some gray wolves and I believe red wolves that they had there to raise and breed and everything. And that particular wolf was a wolf they couldn't release, so they used it to do a lot of education at schools and stuff like that. So how they had it set up was the wolf has their own land to run around, and they had these like really high fences, and they have cutouts in the fences where you can stick your lens through to take photographs of them. So you don't have to have the fence in the way, or there's like towers where you could get on the tower and then shoot into the enclosure so you can get shots uninhibited by the fences and all that stuff. So I had in my mind the type of shots I wanted to get of these wolves. And I said, I want to get a close-up of his face. So I could put it on the wall. I had everything scoped out where I wanted it to be. And that's actually a copy. I have another one downstairs on my wall that I printed out and hung and everything. But the other reason that's special to me is because my buddy from junior high school that I've known since 8th grade, we went to high school together, went to college together, graduated college together, ended up working at the same job. He surprised me. I told him, I said, I'm going to go look at some wolves this week. And he said, oh, I want to come. He never mentioned nothing about animals ever in life. And he said, you want to come with me? So I was like, wow, this would be cool because we hadn't seen each other for a minute at that point in time. So him and I drove up to 6 hours up to New Salem, New York, and spent time hanging out with some wolves for the day. So that's why that's special to me. Outside of like, it's a great shot, but I got to hang out with my friend.
That's really cool.
That is.
Thanks.
Has the pandemic at all affected, you going out taking photos or anything, especially early on?
It made it better.
Everybody say
that again.
Oh my gosh. So
I'm not gonna say everybody said it. All photographers say that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was the best time. I cried when it was over. I'm like, what do you mean? People go, why?
So for me, it was amazing because we were working from home like 5 days a week. So I had time. It was weird because I got to explore my own neighborhood more than I ever had before, because before the pandemic, I was up at 5 a.m. and I was getting home at like 7. And depending on the time of year, if it was wintertime, it was dark. So I'm getting home, I'm pulling right into the garage and I'm going upstairs. I'm not doing nothing else. So when the pandemic hit and it was going into the springtime, at lunchtime, I'm taking walks through the neighborhood. I'm like, I didn't know we had these animals out here. And like, so I have 2 ponds in my neighborhood that are full of turtles. And I never knew that before because I always kind of just drove by, never really paid any attention. And I would take walks at lunchtime. I'm seeing huge bullfrog tadpoles in the ponds swimming around, all types of wading birds, blue herons, little blue herons. I'm like, man, I went and bought some waders so I can go inside the pond and try to catch tadpoles. I was like living like a kid again during the pandemic. I'm catching tadpoles and looking at them and putting them back. And there was some huge Easter snapping turtles in there, like huge, that I didn't know they were there. And I would do crazy stuff like get a GoPro and stick it on like the end of a pole and put it under the water so I can see the turtle swimming on the water. I was just experimenting with all types of things during the peak of the pandemic. And then just like for me, it was in a kind of an escape of everything that was going on as well. Because I remember one day I was off, got up early, like 7 a.m., put the kayak on the roof, went to State Park, and I kayaked for like half the day, just shooting and hanging out on little inlets and little beaches I would find along the way and hang out and eat and just watch the waves and watch the birds fly by. And I forgot we were in the pandemic. I literally forgot. I packed up everything. I was going to Chick-fil-A, and then I was about to strut in without my mask on. I was like, oh, crap, we're still in this pandemic. I had totally forgot. So for me, it was because I had more time to do it. I had a lot more time to do photography around the neighborhood. I had a lot more time to go different places. I didn't have to go into the city and then come back and do all that commuting. So like my time was mine again. And I think the other thing is that in terms of mental health, it was like great because like there's nothing else to do. You can't go to the restaurants, you can't go to the bars, you can't go to the clubs. I'm like, I like being outside anyway, so I get to do more of what I like to do. And it just kind of gave me an outlet to kind of get away from the news and all the other stuff that was going on. So I loved it. Like I'm still working from home, mostly in the office 1 day a week. So I love it. I'm dreading the day when they say, oh, you got to come back 5 days a week. If that ever happens, I'm dreading it. But for right now, I love the extra time that I have. I love being able to take walks in the neighborhood during lunchtime and, or just kind of sit in my bedroom and watch the birds come to my windowsill and hang out. Like I like it. I loved it when it happened outside of, people getting sick and stuff.
Yeah, I can totally agree.
In terms of like the taking the camera in and out of the dry bag, if I'm photographing something, birds or whatever, if there's a lot of them going on, like a lot of them around or a lot of stuff going on, I'll keep it out and shoot as long as they're there. But when they're gone, I put it back in because I may want to keep moving or something like that. So I put it back in there. Now I don't zip it up when I put it back. I leave it open so that I can have easy access to get in and out. But other than that, like I think about it like this. If you think you're going to drop your camera, you're going to drop your camera. If you got to kind of move like you're not going to drop it in the water.
Yeah.
A lot of people tell me I'll be too scared to drop it in the water. Then you probably shouldn't do it because you're probably going to drop it in the water.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think about it that way. I confidently put it out, I get my shots, and I confidently put it back in. I think that's how you got to kind of move with it. Or, it's like with anything else, it's your mindset first, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. David, how would you describe your style?
Good question. So one of my goals when I started doing nature photography and started like the kind of nature under your nose thing was to bring in Black people back to the outdoors and enjoying your nature. So one of the ways I thought I could do that is by getting nice tight close-up shots of my subjects so that people can see how beautiful common birds or common insects or whatever are that they can find all around them in their local parks, to their neighborhoods, or in their backyard. So a lot of the shots that you'll see that I have on Instagram are, for the most part, nice kind of tight shots where you can see the detail being brought out in my subject.
Right.
So for me, and I mean, if it's a faraway shot, it's a faraway shot because I could not get closer, and I still take those type of shots and work with those. But my goal is to, if it's a sparrow, if it's whatever, to be able to get you a close-up shot of that sparrow so you can see the detail and the coloration that you may not see, because some people may think a sparrow is just a city bird. There's nothing special about it, but I've taken photos of mourning doves, and with the right light, there's all types of different colors and their feathers and blues and grays and oranges that's in those feathers that you may not see because, you're not your eye is seeing what it's seeing, and then it's not zoomed in. You're not close up holding it and looking at it. So that's why my style is trying to get nice, tight, composed shots with a lot of detail and colors brought out so that my audience can see what's special about these different animals or insects that may be around them locally where they are. And that's kind of my goal. Like, I think, like, for example, my parents, they're still in Maryland, and I'll go explore the woods I grew up in around the house and take photos, and I'll show them different birds. I didn't know this bird was around here. Where does red bird come from? Where this blue bird or whatever? I'm like, just right in your backyard. And now they've got bird feeders up. They send me cell phone pictures of birds they see. They'll call me and tell me, I just saw this bluebird, what is this? Or I saw this red bird, what is this? Or this yellow bird, what is this? And they're excited about it because I kind of brought out this a greater appreciation for their backyard by showing them these nice, tight, close-up photos of these little birds that they see putting around but don't really know what they look like. So that's, to answer the question, my style would be tightly composed shots with a lot of detail brought out.
Did you say like, hey mom, you would have known a whole lot more about birds had you not made me take the eggs off of them?
No, I still think she would have put them eggs out. I don't think she would have cared about that. She didn't want me messing up her kitchen.
So you mentioned your parents, you kind of like introduced them to the bird scene. Who or what would you say inspires you to keep taking photos or creating or getting out there and looking for these animals?
I think I would probably say first and foremost, my love of nature inspires me to keep going and pushing myself and trying to get better shots or different shots or finding easier ways to do things to get shots. But I think my main driver is that I'm still not seeing the diversity I want to see in terms of people of color being outside as much as I am. So that also is what continues to push me because, again, my goal from day one was to say, hey, I am a Black male in America. I'm going out into these woods. I'm seeing these amazing things. I'm taking these pictures and I'm making it back home safe. And that's kind of the message I want to put out there to people, to get them to say, hey, look, if he's going out here, he looks like me, he's around my age or whatever the case may be, he's going out and seeing these cool things, maybe I can go out and see those things too for myself. And I mean, it hit me one day. I was out, I might have been kayaking or something, and this eagle just flew right over my head, just low. And I'm looking around like, who else is out here? I'm like, oh, like, where is everyone? I want somebody else to see this. I want somebody else to see this besides me. And that's the kind of the driver. Like, the more I see more diverse people out in the woods, people that look like me, Black, brown, whatever, not that I'll stop, but I'll feel that I've been doing my job better if I continue to see more people out there like that. And I've been surprised quite a few times where I've been kayaking and thinking I'm the only one out there, and another guy pulls up next to me, that's the brother, and we nodding at each other, and then I got to ask what you doing out here. I don't see nobody else out here. So, yep, that's happened. I mean, I've seen it, and it really makes my heart warm because I'm like, okay, you getting it. You're out here too, doing what I'm doing, and and if they have kids out there, it's even better, because I think if you could start kids in our community being outside at a younger age, like I was, you have a greater appreciation for it. You won't be scared of it. You have an appreciation for it. You'll kind of pass that down the line as generations continue.
You mentioned
go ahead.
I
let me chime in on it. we've been doing this for what, about almost 3 years now.
Our anniversary is in June.
Awesome.
And
Awesome.
it's amazing how, for me, and I'm sure for Angela too, because we talk all the time, it's like we know that we're out there. We just don't really see us, as many. But the more we do this, the more we finding out, oh, we're out there. We seeing more and more and more. We're coming across more and more of us, that's doing the landscape, the wildlife, the nature, out there hiking and doing this kind of stuff. And I think it's great that, like you said, because there's plenty of times it's just me and my husband, or me look to the left, to look to the right, don't see anybody. But the more we we doing these interviews, and we just coming across more and more of us out there doing this, and that's great. That's like really great.
Yep.
I know, I agree. You mentioned David earlier, and there's a couple of things, but I think it all relates to this question that I'm going to ask you. So you had mentioned nature under your nose. You had mentioned, getting people outdoors and you being an example of going out in wildlife. Can you share with us about why nature under your nose? How did that come to be?
Okay. So when I started doing the videography and the photography, my first thing when I started, I was like, man, I want to go somewhere cool, and I want to go to Africa and shoot lions and elephants and all that stuff. And I thought about it, I was like, still I go to work. I don't know how much that costs, but I had to start somewhere, right? So I said, you know what, I'm going to practice in my backyard. I'm going to practice my photography when I go to my parents' house, my brother's house, whoever's house. I'm going to practice at these local areas around me, these parks, these wildlife refuges, and like kind of hone my craft and learn the animals and their habits and how they move and all that good stuff. I'm going to start here, because anywhere I go, that'll translate to Africa. It'll translate to wherever. So one day I was driving from Delaware through Baltimore, and I saw a hawk sitting on the street lamp. I was like, man, these things are everywhere, right under our nose. Like why is nobody saying this? I was like, oh, nature under your nose, nature under your nose. I like nature under your nose. And then when I got to my destination, I Googled it to make sure nobody else had it, that it wasn't a thing, and it wasn't. So I went and on I think GoDaddy.com and make sure I locked down the website. When I made my Instagram page, I made sure I locked that down and nobody had that. And then the logo that I created, it came from being sometimes in the city, sometimes in the forest, sometimes on the island, wherever, and seeing nature. So to me, I always kind of feel like there's a juxtaposition between the urban areas and the wild areas, and they kind of come together because you can find nature in either or. So I was like, I want to do something that kind of encompasses where you can find nature in the city, you can find it in the forest, you can find it anywhere. And so ironically, I was in a meeting at work, and I should have been paying attention, but I wasn't. I was doodling this logo in my notepad. And I had a coworker who had a side business where she had a graphics design company as a side business. So I was like, look, here's my idea. I mocked it up. And originally I had a kind of a cityscape on top, mirroring a forest on the bottom. So it was kind of like a mirror image that one could be interchanged with the other in terms of finding nature. So I worked with her artist, and he kind of took that and kind of combined the city and the encroaching on the nature and the wildlife, trees encroaching on the cityscape, and put nature under your nose in there. And it just kind of came together. And the main concept was that I'm finding nature wherever I go. And it's right under our noses. I mean, I was in DC, urban as DC is, and I was at my brother's house to find a praying mantis hanging out on his door handle. And I took out my macro lens and took a shot of that. I'm like, these things, they're everywhere. So if you're looking for it, you will find it. And that's where it kind of came from, just being able to look at an environment and see it differently than everybody else. I remember I was at a park, and there was a pileated woodpecker on the ground just banging away on a tree, on a dead tree log that fell, and people just walking by, just talking about nonsense, just walking by. I'm like, yo, you don't see that? That's the biggest woodpecker in North America right here. Like they just walking by, don't even care. And but I want to help develop that sense of seeing the world through a different lens, so to speak, through the photography. So that's kind of where Nature Under Your Nose came from. It's like you can find nature any and everywhere. When I drive, I'm constantly kind of scanning the power line, see if a hawk's sitting there. Now I got my parents doing that and my niece and nephew doing it, because like it just opens up your mind so that the world's a bigger place with a lot more going on than what we think is going on.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're gonna switch this over to gear, because you mentioned
Okay.
your macro lens.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm sorry, was that a Canon macro lens?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. So I will burst your bubble a little bit. The first DSLR I had was a Nikon. It was a Nikon D40 many moons ago, but I got rid of it. I sold it to get a Canon so that I could do the video on the DSLR, because Nikon at the time didn't have the video capabilities. So, just saying, I'm a Canon man, but I did start out on a Nikon. I'm just saying.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm sorry, Keisha. What else? What else?
I'm hanging out. I'm done. I'm just playing.
Since we're talking gear, aside from your camera equipment, what is the gear that you make sure that you always have in your bag?
Okay, so I brought a few props with me. So I have one that I have. This is a foldable stool. So along with the patience thing that we kind of talked about earlier, sometimes I will pop a squat and just sit under a tree and see what happens by. Like sometimes I don't feel like doing all that hiking and moving. If I hear a lot of commotion, birds are singing and things like that, I'll sit down. I'll find out where they're the loudest, and I'll open this up and I'll just sit and see what happens. Just the other day, I was at the state park by my eagle's nest that I like to go to, and it was a pair of eagles just kind of flying by, vocalizing to each other. I said, you know what? I came out here to look for some tadpoles or whatever, but I'm gonna sit here and watch these eagles do their thing. So I folded this out, propped it up against a big old fallen tree, and I just sat and watched them for like 45 minutes and didn't do nothing else. So this foldable stool is definitely one
So
that
you
I
have that
take.
strapped onto your bag?
Yeah, so my backpack has like a kind of like
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
what in the world is going on? No.
We got cameras going out. We got Siri jumping up in this conversation.
I don't know what happened with that. Yeah, so my backpack does have like a strap that I can clip. So I just clip this on and it kind of hangs on the side of the backpack. So, and it's very light, it's not heavy or anything like that. So that's one thing. The other thing I have, which people are all surprised that I have, is a thorn pruner. So typical garden tool.
Yeah.
So for me, where I'm going is typically a lot of thorns and brushing my way. Instead of trying to barrel through it and get all that stuff stuck in my clothes, I just clip them out of the way. Clip, and I just walk right through. Okay. It just hit me because I'm tired of getting stuck on these thorns and getting in my way. So I bring these little rose pruners, and it helps me to make less noise because I'm not struggling, and I just kind of clip, and I walk, clip, walk, and I get through it. So I keep these. A friend of mine made this, molded this holster for me so that I can put this on my belt.
Okay.
And I just pull it out and clip and move as I go through the woods. So that's another one. My fiance got me one of these cotton carriers.
Yeah.
So I haven't really used it yet. When I walk,
you'll love it.
So when I walk the dog in the neighborhood, I started using it then, and when I'm walking her, so that if I see something, I can get a photograph of it, just to kind of get used to kind of having it on. But I do see the value in this because my hands are free and I can, kind of move about more free. Because typically I just have my camera and I just walk with it, and so I never really wear it around my neck. I just kind of walk with it, so I just pull it up when I need to use it. But this, This should definitely be a game changer. I think this season, and like I said, I'm gonna get the binocular hip clip thing or whatever that goes on here, so I don't have to wear binoculars around my neck.
Have you put your camera on the cotton carrier yet?
Yes, I have. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
You're just getting
With
kind
your
of used to the
zoom lens?
weight. Yes. Yep. Yeah, just kind of getting used to the weight of it all. Other stuff I carry, I have a pair of muck boots that I keep in my trunk. Yeah, I got those because there's certain areas that hiking boots just not gonna get it done. Like your feet are gonna get submerged in mud, you're gonna get wet or whatever. Muck boots, I can run through everything. Thorns, I don't gotta worry about snakes bothering me. And I've been able to get some great shots of wetland birds because I'm able to walk through all that muck and mud without having to worry about my shoes or legs getting dirty or whatever. So muck boots are great. I love those. What else do I have? I carry some type of weapon or tool, quote unquote, with me when I'm by myself. That could be some type of knife, it could be pepper spray, it could be bear spray. It just depends on where I'm going and how comfortable I am in that area. It depends on what type of tool I'll take with me. So that's one, those are things that I carry as well. If I'm kayaking, I have a whistle that I have in case something happens. It's supposed to be like a really loud whistle that could be heard for like a mile or something like that.
Wow.
So I have that. Oh, did I bring those in here? Darn it, I don't think I brought them in here. All right.
Wow.
So I have a pair of tactical pants I got off Amazon. So these pants are great because not only do they have a lot of pockets, they have a pocket in the knee area so you can slide in some foam knee pads. So
I'm gonna need that Amazon link.
You know what? Hold on one second. I'm gonna go get them. Hold on 1 second.
Okay. Hi, Keisha. Welcome back.
Hi.
Nice to see
My
you.
camera gonna go out again.
You didn't want to use a laptop camera?
No.
What camera are you using?
I'm using my DSLR camera.
All right. So these pants I got from Amazon. Right in here is a pocket for foam knee pads. So the reason I love these is because if I'm trying to get low shots of animals that are low to the ground, I don't want to have pebbles digging into my kneecaps or stones or whatever. Yeah. So those came in handy. Once I saw those, I was sold because every like piece of gear that I have outside of the camera is to make my life easier when I'm in the woods. The knee pads allow me to kneel when I have to worry about hurting my knees or scratching them or that type of thing. I'm able to hold different stuff in the pockets, clip different things to them. So yeah, pretty much everything I have is just to make my life easier and to make me more efficient when I'm in the woods. Have a photography hide or blind that I got off this website, Tragopan. I think it's called tragopan.com. And I used that so I had a pair of, not a pair, but a mother fox and kits in the back of my house in the woods. And I would see them, but of course, anybody know foxes, they're very skittish. They take off at the drop of a dime. So I got this hide or blind that I set it up in the woods and left it there overnight. So if they're back there roaming around, they get used to this thing being there. So I got up really, really early and probably a little bit before sunrise and got in there and got set up. And sure enough, they came out, putting around, kids playing with each other, and I was able to get some photographs. Only thing that was the problem was foxes have really good hearing, so they heard that shutter click, 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 and the mom was like, I'm out of here. So I got enough that I was happy with, but that's why my next camera, I'm eyeballing these mirrorless Canons now because they have the silent shutter or the the electronic shutter, which doesn't make, if it makes a sound, it's very low, but I don't think they make a sound at all. So that's kind of like my next journey into mirrorless is getting I think it's the I'm looking at the Canon R5, but I know they're coming out with a new one next year, Canon R5 Mark II. I don't know, like, either if I should wait and get the one that's out now or wait for the new one. I'd rather doing like an update to the current one to add some more features to it. I don't know. But my whole thing is I want the electronic shutter and I want the new the autofocus capabilities where they can track the eye movement of this subject and recognize animals and stuff like that. That's, to me, that's gonna be a game changer for me in that regard. But right now, I'm just trying to get the funds together for that. But again, it's one of those things where I work with what I have and maximize it until I can take it up to the next level. But gear wise, I'm looking at a mirrorless camera next.
So before I got cut off again, what is your longest lens?
It's a, I have it here. So this is my baby that I use. It's a Canon 7D Mark II, and this is the Sigma 150 to 600 millimeter lens. And this is a crop sensor, so it has, I think, the 1.5 magnification, additional magnification to it because of the crop sensor. So it's a little bit more than 150 and a little bit more than 600 at the longest focal length.
Okay.
But that gets me, you know, nice, close, and personal without having to be nice, close, and personal, depending on what the animal is.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the aperture on that?
It's not the best. It's like I think it's 5.6 to, it's 5 to 6.3.
Yeah, that's like average on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too. It's like I don't sweat that stuff too much because I'm not really doing a lot of low light shooting anyway.
Right.
But there are times where it's like I wish I had a better aperture on this lens. But it's hard because between, you know, Canon only putting out a certain number of zoom lenses, which typically don't have the focal length that I want. You just kind of got to deal with what you got to deal with. And then if you do get a telephoto lens with like a 4, you know, f-stop or whatever, like that's going to be like $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for that.
Got to give up a couple.
Actually, it's 12,999.99.
And you got to give up a baby toe and a finger.
Yeah, they can have that. That's too much money for a lens. I mean, even as much as I love photography, almost 13 grand, that's a down payment for something.
You see what I got to put up with this one? All right. So David, you know, with all of the information that you have provided with us and a little bit more inspiration for me to go shopping on Amazon some more, what advice would you give people who have an interest in doing birding and wildlife photography?
I would say that's a good question. There's a lot of pieces to this type of photography. I think probably more so than dealing with portrait or, you know, people photography, for lack of a better term. But I would say find out what you like to shoot. Like, because I know there's a lot of great macro photographers that I've seen on Instagram who they focus on bugs solely and insects and, you know, other, you know, micro-sized animals. And then people that specifically do birds. And there's people like me who kind of like a jack of all trades, likes everything. So I would probably say kind of figure out what you like to shoot and maybe start there. Then determine I guess the budget of what you want to spend on equipment. I mean, I tell people, you know, I was actually working with some kids a couple weekends ago, and they asked me about, well, I want to start doing nature photography. Where should I start? I'm like, well, if you don't have a lot of money to throw around, just start with your cell phone. Take pictures of flowers, take pictures of insects, use your cell phone, look at the lighting, look at the composition, rule of thirds, all that good stuff, and kind of start there and then build up those skills to develop your eye. And then when you get the money to get the camera, then all the more better because you're starting with some skills you've already developed before you had the equipment. But I would say know what you want to shoot, kind of figure out a budget of what type of equipment you can afford. And other than that, just go out and do it. Just go out and shoot, because
Right.
like you got to practice. Like that's the only way that I think that with this type of any photography, I think you got to go out and practice. Whether it's portraiture of people, street photography, whatever, you got to go out and practice. And I would probably say don't put a lot of pressure on yourself. To one, don't compare yourself to what other people are doing. Two, don't be too hard on yourself, because your shots may not look like other people's stuff or whatever. Like, and I think when you don't compare, it helps you to develop your eye and how you want to see the world through your phone or through your camera. And just start simple. Start in your backyard. I started in my backyard and moved out to other parts of the world,
Right.
other parts of the country. And you'd be amazed when you're looking for something to shoot in your backyard, what you will find back there that you weren't noticing before, because now you're looking for it. So that would be my advice. Keep it simple. Kind of figure out what you like, what you don't like. And I think it'll help you to, especially for nature photography, it'll help you learn your local area better, because you got to find places to go shoot. So you may go to a park you never been to before, a refuge you never been to before, or take a drive to another state you never been to before to find something new. And I think that's all part of the process, is the exploration, the kind of self-discovery and discovery of your local area. I think all of that is what I would advise people to do. Just start simple, know what you want to shoot, kind of find a budget for what equipment you want to get, and just go out and do it. I think that's the only way to really start, is to start, I think.
That's best advice, really. Yeah, because a lot of people think they gotta just, Keisha and I talk about it, people think that, they gotta go travel to some exotic land.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't even know that there's birds around in their backyard.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Or know how to take a picture.
Mm-hmm.
But they're trying to go to some exotic land.
Yeah,
I mean, I felt the same way.
And you touched on it a little bit earlier when you were saying, when we were talking about, is it the camera or the photographer? You got people out here with these expensive cameras, but they don't know lighting, they don't know composition.
Nope.
So they gotta start somewhere. And like you said, keep it simple. And as you grow in your photography, then you can grow with your gear.
Yep.
We kind of touched on this earlier too, about the African Americans. We make up a very small percentage of we make up a small percentage when it comes to landscape, nature, wildlife photography. So tell us, what does it mean to you when you see someone like yourself out there kayaking, bushwhacking, looking for birds?
It's
He said, and bushwhacking. No, he has his shears. He hasn't even bringing the bushwhack stuff for him.
Now I do have machetes in the back of the trunk too.
I was gonna ask you if you have machetes.
I do.
Too.
Yeah, I have a full size.
So I was
one,
right with the bushwhacking.
You're right. No, I do it if I have to. I try to have everything for different environments when I'm going out. But yeah, to answer your question, I think when I see people that look like me out there, it's no different than when you're going to a place where you don't expect to see people that look like you, and they're there. It's that nod, it's that all right type of thing. It just makes you happy. You might not even like have a conversation with them, but it's like this energy, this unspoken connection that you have when you see people that look like you in certain spaces. And I think it translates to the woods and the outdoors as well. There's been times where I don't like to bother people when they're out doing the nature thing. I don't like to bother people, but there's been a few times where like I was kayaking, I saw another brother out there, and I just kind of slid over, like, look, man, I just gotta ask, like, what you doing out here? So, and we had that conversation, how you got out here, how I got out here. And it's the similar thing is where it's like, I met a guy who was fishing at one of the local waterways in Delaware when I was out there. And he was telling me, he said, I love it. I come out here all the time. And I said, I'm out here too. And so I try to get my buddies to come out, and they're scared to get on the water. They're scared they can't swim. They're scared of the bugs, this, that, and the third. And I'm like, they're missing out. And so when I do see people out there, it's like I get a sense of they get it too. They get it, and they're out here. To me, it's just like it's family you haven't met before, seeing them somewhere, and y'all out there and y'all communing together and stuff like that. That's how I kind of think about it. It makes me feel very happy to see other folk out there doing what I'm doing, or doing something different or similar, or whatever the case may be. Like I have a sense of like connection when I see them out there.
Okay. Yeah.
I like how he always says the nod. It's like
Yep.
that universal, like
Universal. Yep.
Well, David, before we wrap this up, I want to bring notice to a few things so that our viewers can know that they can purchase the Nature Under Your Nose t-shirts. You want to let them know where they can get those t-shirts at? Everybody, Keisha does have a shirt, but she just forgot to put it on. So it's not that we purposely plan to have our shirts on. She just, yeah. Want to make sure that people understand why two of us have it and she doesn't have it. She has a shirt. She does.
So yeah, I have a store on bonfire.com. I will post that on my Instagram page after this releases, so that the folks want to buy t-shirts. I'm working on some new products as well. Probably some hoodies, long sleeve tees, and I just did some air fresheners for the car with my logo on it, experimenting with those type of things. So those should be out soon. Yeah, so bonfire.com, I have a store on there, and I'll make sure I get that information out to the public.
And you teach photography classes.
Yes.
Drop that information too, please.
So for those of you on the East Coast or in tri-state area, I teach classes, photography classes at the Mount Cuba Center in Hockessin, Delaware. I believe, I could be wrong, but I think I'm their first nature photography class that has been taught there at the Garden. So I teach there, and I have a class coming up in May. I believe it's May 13th, if I'm not mistaken, at Mount Cuba. Go on their website and look at their course selections, and you will find me on there. I'm teaching a nature photography course. I'm also going to be doing some early morning nature walks and even nature walks there as well at the Garden. Great experience. My goal with these classes is one, to again bring in a diverse audience. As I've been teaching there, I'm starting to see more people of Black, Hispanic, and Asian students coming in to take the classes and learn from me, which has been great. I'm excited about that. And a lot of times people come in, they have like nice DSLRs, they don't know how to use them. They put it right on that green auto button. And the goal of my classes is to kind of demystify what aperture is, what shutter speed is, what it does to your shot. Does it give you that bokeh you're looking for or not? It depends on what you want to see. Tell you how to use those things to get the shots that you want, along with tips for specifically nature photography, some tools that I have, some tricks that I have to get the shots that I get, and kind of explain all of that stuff. And also how you can do some of those things with your cell phones as well. So
perfect. Well, we thank you, David Greaves, for allowing us to interview you today and for you to share so much of yourself, from the birding, the wildlife, the kayaking, and the gear with Amazon stuff. I'm serious though. I need them links. I need to.
I'm telling you, they changed the game. They changed the game.
Well, we are getting ready to wrap this up. People, please reach out to David. His Instagram is Nature Under Your Nose, right? And the website address?
The website is dgreaves.picfair.com if you want to purchase some prints. That's my website for that. And I'm also on, oh gosh, what's that other platform? Oh shoot, it begins with a V. I forget what it's called.
That's okay. When you think of it, you can.
Yep.
What is it?
That's
Vero.
Vero. Yep.
Oh, okay.
I'm on Vero at Nature Under Your Nose as well. Same tag as Instagram. Yeah. So that's where you can find me.
All right.
Okay.
Keisha, anything else we're missing?
No, but all of David's information will be in the description below. So make sure you go by, check out his work, pick up a t-shirt, even a print. And please be sure to share this video. And for those who are not yet subscribed, please subscribe to our growing YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell to be notified of new content. Thank you for watching.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.